Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game podcast and stream. And Teos is here, and boy, are his arms tired from holding up all the things that we are going to talk about this week. Teos, how was your weekend?
My weekend was cool. I did something really kind of bizarre but poignant, and yeah. So there is a mall in town, one of two in Portland, called the Lloyd Center, and it has been around forever. You know, sort of institutional. It was old when I got here, and it has like an ice skating rink that people love and things like that. And it's closing. They've tried a lot of things over the years to keep it going. Well, Jonathan Liu, who's an area board game fanatic, works on Geek Dad's websites, things like that. Does a million board games reviews, owns every board game you can think of. He organized and held a board game day in the food court. And it was amazing. We got together and there was a plethora of games to play and tried a bunch of games, played with friends and families and people I'd never met before. It was really kind of cool, just way to bring community. And because they're trying to celebrate the going out, it started out like just half the mall, maybe 3/4 is just completely empty and papered over kind of thing. And then you get to this one area, which is where people are celebrating. There's still a few food court vendors and things. It was cool, but it also made you think about how life changes. The shift to online, and this will mirror some of what we're going to talk about because I think our hobby is going through some big changes along these lines. But it was interesting to see this kind of, the mall. You and I grew up with this being like, mom, dad, drop me off here. Definitely don't come in. I'm going to be with my friends here. The mall is where it's at. This is the coolest spot in town. And now it's, it's Amazon, but you don't hang out there. So what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, that really is poignant. And it will get into some of the stuff we're going to talk about both in our news segment and in our main segment. Our main segment this week is going to be looking at the roadmap that was laid out and all of the announcements about D&D that went on at Gen Con. But first, we've got some news, and we also have our listener corner here. People send us questions via Patreon, via YouTube, via social media, to our email, masteringdnd@gmail.com, or, in real life. And coming to us via YouTube is our first question from Rapasso New. Hi, when you read the description of the adventure, such as Wild Beyond the Witchlight from the book, would you share that with the players at any point when suggesting it to the players or at the start of the campaign? For example, Wild Beyond the Witchlight contains spoilers about the Hourglass Coven, and many other book summaries do as well. As a DM, I like to keep secret anything the characters wouldn't already know and let them discover the plots and actors as they adventure. So the question really is, how do you handle spoilers?
Yeah.
And for me, it depends on the exact nature, the exact spoilers, the exact gaming group I'm playing with. Obviously, some spoilers are way too spoiling and would ruin a great surprise, or it will relieve dramatic tension too soon.
Yeah.
Some spoilers, however, I think go quite far in whetting the appetites and actually getting and keeping a group's attention and can build anticipation. So the key is to know who your players are, what do they anticipate, and what can you give them enough of to keep them driving forward toward that goal, and then figure out a way to pay off that anticipation with a proper reveal. What do you think, Teos?
Yeah, this question reminds me of the blurbs that are on the front of every organized play adventure. I think they're still there. I don't know. They used to be, at least.
Yeah,
in 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, they've all had these blurbs that are like 2-3 sentences that will say something to let you know what it is. And it used to be habit that every DM, when they ran an adventure, they would read that in organized play settings. But what started happening is you start realizing, well, it's kind of like spoiling things, or it's the cart before the horse kind of thing. But then I thought to myself, okay, well, why did we read it? And it's exactly what we were talking about. It's that setting, whetting the appetite, setting the stage, letting you understand the themes. And so I think that's what I would recommend doing is I wouldn't read it whole cloth, but I would, during a session 0, or if it's a one shot at the beginning, reinforce those themes so people know and they start aligning their brains towards it, right? This is going to be whimsy, but also with a touch of horror. It's going to be fantastic and creative and imaginative. a lot of ability to do what you want, that isn't just combat to resolve situations, right? Those are things worth saying to the group so they start kind of aligning with that. And so I think that's the value of it, right? But yeah, I think a lot of the reality is, what are the books? The copy is made to sell primarily to a DM. You're the DM, so you don't need that message, and you don't need that message isn't exactly right for your player. So I would not read it whole cloth.
Yeah. I mean, for Tomb of Annihilation, going in knowing that you were going to be facing down a Sararak, it does it spoil it a bit,
sure.
But you also have players that are like, a Sararak, I remember Tomb of Horrors, and I can't wait to, right? So there's different audiences and different needs amongst those audiences.
I mean, the cover of every adventure is probably a spoiler of some kind.
You're not wrong. Okay, let's take the question from Bugbear Breath via Bluesky. Do you think, quote unquote, bloat is even a bad thing? Or is it really just more options, the better? With the new announcement of certain IPs being presented with 5e, we'll come to that later, speaking of spoilers. The question is 5e the default, is 5e being the default TTRPG system good for the hobby? So he's thinking of Vampire the Masquerade having a 5e version, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Call of Cthulhu by Torchlight, etc. Is that good for the hobby? So these are two questions. First, is bloat a bad thing? The word bloat implies negativity, right? It's a bad thing. You're not never like, I feel so bloated and I'm wonderful. So let's frame this question differently. On one end of the spectrum, you have bloat. What is that? It's a situation where there is more content than a particular person can manage. On the other end, there's the same thing, but we call that options, right? And most people love to have options. So the question is, how can you maximize the positive aspect of options without bringing on the negative aspects of bloat? And so what is bloat? Bloat is the problem when a person, especially a GM, becomes overwhelmed with the options. Sometimes the concept of bloat is more psychological than anything. Right? The person wants to know everything there is to know, but there's so much that they just cannot do it. So they feel bad about not knowing everything. Sometimes the bloat is very practical. Sometimes the bloat is just, I'm running an organized play campaign where all the sources are allowed, and I just can't comprehend it all. It's not that I feel bad about it. It's just I literally physically can't do it. So the question we're trying to answer is, can we take that bloat and minimize that part of it while maximizing options? What do you think about that, Teos?
Yeah, I see bloat as kind of like two things, right? One is on the player side. If you think about the first time you open up that player's handbook, everything's amazing, right? And then you get a source book and you're like, oh, there's now, this subclass and this feat and this thing. It's all so cool. But whatever if you were to put I'm not to be an economist here, but if you were to put a value on that new feat in the book, right? You'd assign it some value, right? You'd finally, you'd spend some time, but eventually you'd assign it a numerical value. Well, the next book, you'd assign it a slightly lower value. And at some point, after your 420th source book, the value is pretty low, right? Which
negative.
It
could be a negative value.
Yes, because now the only way you can make a character is in the character builder or whatever, and it takes so long to search and all these things, right? So yeah, eventually it's negative value. And I would say that 4th edition, when it began to just every week give you on D&D Insider many, like dozens of new things for your character, that was bloat, right? Players that loved options were like, I don't know, like this is a bit much. I'm redoing my character every other week, right? Because you were allowed to do so for organized play. That's a lot. And in a home campaign, you can imagine the stressors on the DM. On the DM side, right, you have that bookshelf of adventures you want to run. And at first you buy that second adventure and you're like, well, I'm still running the first one, but I'm so excited to get to that. And you buy the third one, you're like, cool, well, I might skip the second or I might run it. At some point, you have all of these unrun adventures on your shelf and you go, another one, you know.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. The counterpoint to that, Shawn, is I remember in 3rd edition, we're reaching the end of Living Greyhawk. It's been announced. And there's a kid at our table, a guy at a table. He was our age. Why am I saying kid? A friend at a table. And he's like, I'm really sad because I just started playing this campaign. Everything's new to me. I want to keep going for, the same length of time you did. Right. So your 9th source book is someone's first. Right. So bloat depends on what our audience is doing, because we have our personal bloat, but the collective bloat isn't the person who asked this question, or you or I, or the person you are listening. It's the collective of all of us. And if the market has bloat, that's a big problem, and you're not bringing in new people. But if you're bringing enough people, there's no problem with bloat.
Absolutely. And there is a cure for bloat. There's a cure for bloat at the individual level, and that's called curation. Mm-hmm. Right. The cure to bloat is curation. The cure to bloat, especially if you're a game master and your players are bringing more and more and more content that you just can't wrap your mind around. You have that hard conversation to say, I want to run a Feywild themed setting. Yeah. So I am going to allow this book, and that's all. Yeah. And maybe on a case by case basis, bring me the one thing you want, and we'll see if we can add that. Yeah. And that's the cure to bloat, but it's a hard conversation to sometimes have when the players want so much and the DM wants to, and that's why communication is important. And that's why it's also important that D&D Beyond becomes more flexible, right? To be able to say, to be able to turn this off, to turn this on, and not just have the button that you click, but it doesn't work. Yeah. And the players are still seeing all this extra content you don't want them to see.
Show up to the Dark Sun campaign with your mark feat that you took from Eberron. And and I'll say, to me, there were 2 solutions to bloat back in the 2e era, which was full of source books, right? Endless worlds and source books. You'd think they publish a lot now. Good grief, right? We talked about the EN World article. I went back and looked at the stream of products that came out. So what I did in 2e was 2 things. One was Spelljammer. Everything was allowed. Yeah. And so our players knew they could have just the time of their lives going through every product, campaign setting, anything, find whatever you want. And that was sort of a solution because it's all there very deliberately. And we could have so much fun with it versus, say, being in Planescape or whatever. And as a DM, it meant I could go down onto a planetoid and put anything there, right? It's Icewind Dale stuff, or it's desert stuff, or it's anything in between, right? That was awesome. And the counter to that was Dark Sun, because Dark Sun said none of that other stuff is valid here. So it mandated you to be in a fresh mindset, right? You're playing half giants. You're playing with these rules, not your player's handbook. These rules. You're using D4s to roll up stats, right? Everything, no clerics. It was also fresh. No beholders. That was also different and fresh, that it forced a reset and actually kept a lot of people playing 2nd edition who might have said, I've had too much, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to the second question now. So with the announcements of other IPs being brought into 5e, is 5e as the default TTRPG system good for the hobby? So for me, what's good for the hobby can mean a bunch of different things, right? But for me, it means bringing in new players, bringing in more players, refreshing the player pool as certain people opt out of it. We have more people coming into it. Yeah. It means showing these new and existing players the wide array of options that are available in role-playing games. And it means getting the players who are coming in to become game masters as well.
Yep. Yeah.
What would you add to that list or argue with anything on that list?
No, I think that you're totally on point. The only thing I would say that most listeners may not realize, right, is the reality, assuming this is correct, that Ray Winninger said after he left the Post heading up D&D, where he said that 5e 2014 success was not that it necessarily made you come in as a fan and stay forever. But rather, when they looked at the individual arcs of all those people who come into the hobby and then exit, come into the hobby and then exit, so many people were coming into the hobby that all those little, rocket-like arcs that go up and then down added up to a line going up. right?
Yeah.
That's really amazing, right? And they would still buy the back catalog and so on. They would buy a lot,
Yeah.
and then they'd leave, like everybody always does. And listening to Magic the Gathering through the various financial coverage we've done, they say the same thing. The average longevity is actually sort of shockingly short. Like, I want to think like, oh, the average D&D fan is around for 15 years. That's just not true. I don't know what the number is, but it's not that.
Yeah.
Like you'd like it to be, but it's just not. And so, we are the weird ones. We're not what makes up the hobby, right? We're the bizarre people who play for decades. And, so just what you're saying is very true, especially because of that.
Yeah. So then the question is, what about 5e being the default TTRPG system?
Mm-hmm.
So if you talk about a default system, if you mean default being most used,
mm-hmm.
then I would say 5e is as good a system as any to be that default system. Mm-hmm. 5e as a system, moving aside from the D&D side of that, if you just look at the 5e mechanics, it's as good a system as any because it's fairly easy to teach. Right? You roll a single die when you want to do something. You look at your character sheet, and there might be a number or two that you add to that die. And then you compare it to a number that's usually the game master tells you what that number is. Are there simpler games? For sure. Are there harder games? Hell yeah. I don't want Burning Wheel to be the default system, right? Yeah. I don't want the Genesis dice system to be the default system. Yeah. I love things about those systems. I would love to play those systems, but I don't want that to be the default system. Yeah. And also 5e is fairly modular. Mm-hmm. So if you want it to be simpler, you can change up the action economy to make it simple or complicated. You can change up making characters to be more simple or more complex, right? You can take away stats. You can make, you have 2-3 stats, mental, physical, and social. Boom, you're done. Right, you could do all of these different things with that system. So as a default system, I think it's fine.
Yeah, no, agreed. I can't add anything to that. I think it's a great, it's not a problem for the hobby, right? One of us, a given person may go, man, I'm so tired of D&D. Fine, that's how you feel. But overall, it's quite fine and really one of the better options out there.
Yep. All right. Thank you for those questions. We will get to many, many more in our future episodes because we need to get into our news and commentary section. On any other week, this would have been the biggest news in gaming. There would have been thousands of D&D doom tubers saying that D&D is dead.
Yeah.
John Hight is departing Wizards of the Coast as president. So what does this mean? We don't know. But because Gen Con was happening when this was announced, it sort of has taken a backseat to everything. In a statement to GamesIndustry.biz, Wizards of the Coast said after 2 years as president of Wizards of the Coast, John Hight is transitioning from the role effective September 1st. We're deeply grateful for his leadership and the contributions he's made to our teams and our games during his tenure. John will continue to support Wizards in an advisory capacity while pursuing other creative and professional opportunities he's passionate about. There is no change to the strength of Wizards' businesses. Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons continue to perform incredibly well, consistent with our most recent earnings release and our upcoming 2027 video game slate, including Exodus and Warlock, remains on track. So, Teos, thoughts? Is D&D officially dead?
Of course, it's been dead for years. Nobody's playing. Everybody knows that. I literally had someone tell me that the other day, and okay. Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting. You always have to wonder why people depart a business, right? That either somebody said, this is not working, you should go. You're butting heads with someone, but it doesn't necessarily reflect a problem with the company, right? And this is a good example of that, where whatever the underlying reason may be, the results are fantastic if you're Wizards of the Coast. Like, money could not be better in terms of how the business is doing, primarily because Magic the Gathering. Hight came in with a lot of video game expertise. So maybe this mirrors Hasbro and Wizards' shift away from video games. And by away, I mean, they're not really saying they're pivoting away, but they're talking about how they're being cost conscious. And they've, of course, shut down a lot of projects. So maybe they've realized the number of failures to successes is a problem. And they're just going to, stop that until they feel the market's different. Who knows? On LinkedIn, John Hight echoed what this says. He said, I'm simply making room for a few things I've wanted to pursue for a long time. Creative projects, teaching, more time to play games, and so on. Definitely not retiring. Okay, it's possible it's just that. Usually, people depart a job because they're not loving it, right? Or they're not being loved, one or the other. But it's always possible that something like this happened. I don't know that it means a whole lot for Wizards overall. I think what'll be interesting to see is with this possible pivot to some extent from video games, when they bring in that new president, what will be the emphasis, right? Will it be operational excellence? In other words, kind of do the same that's going on? Will it be video games? Will it be, and what will the background be? That might tell us a lot about maybe some of the background reasons for this shift, or at least where the company's going at that higher level.
Mm-hmm. Well, at a higher level of bookshelf at the big box stores, you might be able to finally find Heroes of the Borderlands. This starter set, Heroes of the Borderlands, is once again at Target. You can search the website and find a local store with it in stock. The starter sets for a long time were sold at the big box stores, and that seems to have stopped when Wizards ended its distribution deal with Random House. But Wizards has promised other ways to have books and sets in those stores, and it looks like it's taken about 2 years to get that to happen. What do you think, Teos?
Well, I was just doing the searching right now here on my computer. It's funny. It says in my local store, only 3 are left. It said 4 yesterday. So, whatever amount of stock they have, they're going through it. That's a good sign. What isn't clear is this a permanent change, right? Like a distribution deal? Or is it more like when they ran Stranger Things, where they had the Stranger Things, box set for a bit, and then it was gone, right? I did look at Walmart, and it was strange. The first time I searched for it in both, I chose an address in North Carolina and an address in Portland. It showed that there were books, and then it didn't. But it doesn't say not available in stores, as it often will. It just says out of stock. So maybe it's something that's getting ready to be there, maybe not. But it's curious to me. I mean, I think to keep an eye on is whether it starts being at all box stores reliably, consistently, or is this a momentary blip just at Target? That'll be very interesting to see. But I'm glad to see it on stores. And people were reporting, I see it at my store and all that, and excitedly. So I hope that is the case, because talking about those arcs of people coming in and out of the hobby, you need it to be in places like this to catch in those new people that have almost not heard of D&D, right? Other than at the vague level. So I really hope this happens.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to get into our Gen Con news. But as I said at the top of the show, we are going to save our D&D news for our main segment. So let's look at some of the other news from non-D&D places that were announced at Gen Con. We're going to start with Free League. Free League announced 2 new One Ring products. One's a bestiary called Creatures Strange and Foul, and the other is a Gondor campaign called The White Tower and the Hall of Gold. They will also have a reprint of the core books with revisions and updates, though they say that that's an optional purchase and you should still be fine with your books. They also released the crowdfunded Invincible superhero role-playing RPG. But the biggest announcement was Free League Unbound, a digital platform created with the help of Adam Bradford, formerly of D&D Beyond and Demiplane. So I've wondered what Adam's been up to since he went from Demiplane to, I think, it was Fantasy Grounds, I think, and then he left Fantasy Grounds, and I was wondering what was coming next, and now we know.
Yeah, Demiplane, right? D&D Beyond to Demiplane to Fantasy Grounds, and he worked on Invincible, and then recently he had that Odyssey project. Yeah, it would be great. We should have Adam on the show. It's fascinating how just suddenly here's Adam Bradford, right? And the idea of this really kind of blew my mind. I mean, on the surface, it's just like, okay, Free League Unbound is in early access. It includes searchable rules on desktop and mobile. It already has a digital reader and compendia for One Ring Alien, Coriolis, and Invincible. Coming soon are character builders, digital dice rolling, and other character tools. And kind of two things. One is Adam shared on, I think it was on Bluesky, that it is priced, things on there are priced as an add-on. But if you already own the PDFs, you can prove that through a support ticket and access will be unlocked for the same products. I presume that if you've bought through the Free League store, they'll eventually match that up and unlock things. Yeah. But the idea is that if you already own it as a PDF, you should be able to just have it here, which is really cool. And the goal is to price based on the work that they have to do. And if you're a new customer, then bill you rather than it being like a big additional add-on. And just the second thing was just me thinking about this and some of the other announcements we're going to cover. They're really quite big in terms of investment. Like it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a site like Free League Unbound, generally, right? Things that D&D did cost even more than that, as we'll talk about in our main segment. And I just thought to myself, like I can see our hobby has been in different parts, like the time when, say, Fate was the #1 Kickstarter RPGs had seen, right? Yeah. And it was just based on like kind of a solid idea and establishing an audience, right? And then we saw things like MCDM, where YouTube is a component, and that's just exploded to where what we see with Avantris and these other groups is just way beyond what you'd ever imagined. And now we're seeing things like big money being spent on platforms, on tools, on marketing. It just shows that the amount of money entering the hobby is growing significantly, and therefore the investment is enormous. And so who is big can change at any time based on these differences, right? Your ability to understand kickstarting, your ability to fund advertising for your crowdfunding, and all these things are just enormous. And so we started with Free League in part because you start with these little things like, we got a couple books coming out. Oh, and by the way, we made this enormous investment in our future, right? Big time. How many books do you have to sell to cover that investment? I don't know, but it's a lot, right? It's a bet. It's not a secure thing. It's a bet. No. Because you're going to have maintenance and all that. And so they're betting on this for the future. And that's a big deal, right? The same way that Drawsteel did with the Codex, or any of these companies are doing with their platforms.
Speaking of other big companies, Daggerheart held their annual event similar to last year's. They brought key designers up onto the stage to talk. Their motto last year was, "We're just getting started." And this year it's, "We want more, more, more." So they announced that Hope and Fear, their supplement, is available everywhere starting on August 25th. And Teos has his copy right there. If you want to
stupid gorgeous. This book is so the Daggerheart stuff. I don't understand how they do the price points of these books, and with all the gorgeous art and everything, you get not only that book, you get an enormous box set with the special version. This box I'm holding up is a box within that box, and inside of it is this magnetically held. I'm going to try to not spill everything, but just all kinds of gold foiled cards and dice sets and there's a DM screen and pads and stuff in the other compartment. Like, it's unbelievable production value, like really, really incredible. Sorry, I just had to show that off because I think that itself is also a marker of where we are in the hobby.
Yeah, it's a marker of the money is coming from places other than selling the game.
Yeah.
And that is a situation that we have rarely been in role-playing game industry. So it's interesting to see happening, and we will, of course, keep an eye on it. Yeah. That Hope and Fear will be available everywhere on August 25th. If you want to pre-order, the last chance will be August 24th. It will also be available on Foundry, Demiplane, and Alchemy. That kicked off their 3 years of planned release. What did they announce? They announced 2 tentpole projects every year, which could include settings, campaigns, expansions, adventures, or more. A free digital adventure pipeline that will include adventures and side quests that will span genres, tiers, and styles of play, that is being launched for free on Daggerheart.com beginning in August. there is a standalone digital release. There will be standalone digital releases for sale, like a Romantasy campaign frame coming in the fall, as well as several more game accessories. November will bring a DM screen, fear trackers, and adversary decks. They have a partnership with Roll and Play Press that will bring one-shot wonders with 100 plus adventures for every Daggerheart campaign in the core and the Hope and Fear books. This will be crowdfunded. What else is going on there, Teos?
They have a partnership to release Daggerheart plushies based on the Age of Umbra Shadowlands actual play series. And check out these translations. They are translating both of their books, the Hope and Fear that just came out and the core book, to Chinese, Hungarian, French, Brazilian, Portuguese, Italian, German, and Spanish. There are varying dates, but other than Germany that doesn't have a date yet, everything is by Q2 of next year, right? So these are already in progress. There are a number of actual plays, some of them that are partnered, some of them that they're running. And you'll see here that these things that we mentioned, right? Of course, there's books, but these partnerships, these sort of investments, right? The translations that you're doing, this mirrors what in the past really very few companies could do, right? And I think that if you had asked really anybody, hey, Daggerheart's coming out as an RPG, right? What do you think will happen down the road? You would never have imagined this much, right?
Yeah.
We can look at now I'm forgetting it. Their gothic horror game that came out before Daggerheart, right? Like,
Candela Obscura.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
There was nothing ahead of time that was going to tell us that one release was different than the other, right? But this has just exploded, and they are riding that forward. The only downside to this, I thought, and I saw this mirrored by Patchwork Paladin on her blog, the presentation had each designer come out and give a few words that were meant to excite fans about upcoming unannounced projects. But it came across as sort of a word salad. They'd be like, I'm romancing you while, and I'm just making stuff up, fighting Rhinoceri. And like it was supposed to excite people, but I think everybody in the crowd and people I spoke with were just sort of like, I don't get it. And so it ended up not being the best technique, which is too bad because last year's Gen Con event, they really got everybody going. And I think this sort of lost a little steam when they did that. But what it tells me is they are planning a whole bunch of cool things that they aren't even yet talking about in this list that you and I just covered.
Yeah. And it's not surprising because when we talk about Wizards, we're going to be talking about into 2027 and beyond. And they're just getting their feet under them, I think, still, comparatively speaking, there at Darrington Press.
Yeah. They're hiring a lot, they said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the thing that's going to, for me, as somebody who creates within the industry, is going to be what kind of third-party support are they going to get for their game? Which means what kind of support will third-party people get from consumers for those games?
Yeah.
Because we still see 5e coming out with third-party people making millions of dollars using 5e. Is that going to be something that creators can do with the Daggerheart audience? Because if it's not, Darrington Press still may be a huge success, but the game itself will remain sort of limited until that sort of support comes from not Darrington Press directly, but from the player base for Daggerheart.
Yeah, Alan Tucker shared on our Discord that Incredible Creatures, adversaries for Daggerheart, just got to platinum level. So I think that there is, we're seeing some success on those lines, but you're right, it needs to keep growing, right? In the same way that Draw Steel had almost no presence, really had no presence at Gen Con, and no news there other than celebrating a year of Draw Steel. Draw Steel has seen some success with some companies with crowdfunders, but if you look at Daggerheart or Draw Steel, any given thing that a fan creates need not blow up, right? And so, how do you grow that and make it so that some larger partner wants to put big advertising, big work, a lot of creative effort, to make a quality product?
Yep. So let's talk about Cosmere. Cosmere was there, and Brotherwise Games announced new partnerships to support Plotweaver, the game system behind the Cosmere RPG. Keith Baker and Jen Ellis of Together Studios will be creating a new genre-hopping setting called Infinite. And we'll host a contest in 2027 for a setting search for Plotweaver. Oh, that's comes full circle with
Right?
Keith having a setting search of his own.
He must have laughed when that got suggested.
Yeah. Earthbound Games will develop an RPG set within the worlds of their Solarpunk Earthborn Rangers board game.
Mm-hmm.
And Plotweaver is in open alpha with a new fantasy setting called Estwild. 2 more settings will be released in September and October, and an early beta is set for 2027. There will be a crowdfunding campaign in quarter 2 of 2027.
And it's interesting. If you go to the Brotherwise site, they handle all sorts of gaming for the novel series and all of that. And so you see like board games and card games and all sorts of stuff that we didn't even mention because they're so busy across the board, right?
Right.
And so what's interesting is just even in the RPG space, the effort that they're putting in for Cosmere, like this idea of trying to take the underlying system of Cosmere, Plotweaver, and make it an open source location like you're talking about, bringing in third party, adding settings that will be there so that you can have a wider experience than the novels themselves. That is really very interesting, right? Trying to do sort of both sides of things. You know, you want to be a Cosmere fan, great, but do you want to just use our system? Well, here is how you can do that. That is really interesting and will be one to watch.
Mm-hmm. Monte Cook Games was there, and they rolled out their revised Cypher Open license. They also announced a new Between Earth and Sky RPG based on the novels by Rebecca Roanhorse. This will be crowdfunded when it is ready.
Wow.
Good times. Of course, there are awards that are given out, starting with the Diana Jones Award. The Diana Jones Award this year went to Mischief Toy Store in St. Paul, Minnesota. The reasoning for this award, Mischief Toy Store made headlines in 2020 for requiring masking and then distributing free Black Lives Matter lawn signs during the George Floyd riots in the Twin Cities. They got nationwide attention again in 2025 for joining a lawsuit against U.S. tariffs. Then just hours after criticizing ICE on a national TV interview, they were targeted by a surprise audit. Yeah, that's not hinky at all. But they resisted turning over their employee records to the DHS. They started printing ICE out posters to distribute as fast as they could and organized a network of 3D printing hobbyists to distribute thousands of ICE alert whistles. Amid the chaos in Minnesota, they had to suspend online ordering, and their website then directed folks to support local immigrant rights organizations instead. They've worked exceptionally hard to make a space at the gaming table for everyone in the midst of upheaval.
Yeah, really, I love that the Diana Jones Award is just so different every year in what they pick as not just an award but an ideal, right? And really cool. But we had more than that, Shawn. We also had the ENnies, and a huge list beyond what we could possibly cover on this show. But I went through the winners. You can see the full list. Weirdly, the ENnies website never updates, but this is taken from their Bluesky feed as they awarded things. So you can see the full list on our website. I think Ian World has it as well. The things that stood out to me, Shawn, I'll see if you have some different ones. Best rules was Daggerheart for gold, Darrington Press. Legend in the Mist got silver for the core books from Son of Oak Game Studio. Best writing was gold, Making Enemies, monster design inspiration for tabletop role-playing games, which is Keith Hamon's book. Congratulations, from Gallery Books. Silver was Rapscallion Magpie Games. Best game was gold, Daggerheart core set, Darrington Press. Best game silver was Legend in the Mist core book, Son of Oak Game Studio. You're hearing some repeats there. Product of the year was gold, the Crooked Moon Ultimate Edition, Avantris Entertainment, and silver was Daggerheart, Darrington Press. Those are kind of the biggest things. Other things that stood out, Shawn?
Daggerheart won a lot. Avantris won a lot. Avantris won fan favorite. It shows that the ENnies are a popularity contest. They are, right? I mean, people vote.
Yeah, step 2 is always popularity. Yep.
Yeah, popularity, and good on everybody who won. Good on the marketing value that goes into being a winner. I would love to see some non-million follower streamers on YouTube get awards as well.
Sure.
Maybe
Sure.
there's an award out there that's, actually looks at the product instead of just fan votes. But, more power to everybody. And, congratulations to the winners.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the nominees. Congratulations to everybody who are playing role-playing games and enjoying them. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, I had a couple that really stuck out to me. I mean, one was that Daggerheart won even with their streaming show. And a number of the things that were like free supplements and so on were things like Avantris winning. And I think it shows that the ENnies is always subject to, like, if it looks really professionally done, they will choose that, right? Versus if it's just useful but isn't pretty, good night. You're not going to get chosen. And seldom will be picked by fans as well. And that's kind of too bad too. It speaks to what you're saying. One thing that I did love was the web learning series Designing Dungeons course, or How to Kill a Party in 30 Rooms or Less, by Joshua McCrowell and Warren D. That is a really neat kind of web series that you go course by course in theory about designing dungeons. And it's really neat, right? It has its particular bent, but it's a really neat thing. And it was nice to see that recognized by fans.
Yeah. So congratulations to everyone else as well. And I got to scroll past this long list of winners.
Yeah.
We also got news that Tabletop is back. Tabletop? What do you mean Tabletop? Tabletop, the web series about board games. So Felicia Day added a stretch goal to her Guild movie Kickstarter to bring back that show, which starred Will Wheaton back in the day. Will would lead a team of players, usually famous folks, playing a board game, teach them how to play, and then show an actual play. The new series will be called Conludo, which is Latin for play together, with a revised format. It will be more conversational, with people discussing a game they like, and then play the game with guests. What do you think, Teos?
It's neat. I mean, Felicia Day and Will Wheaton are always good together. So the idea of them sort of conversationally starting off the show, but it's just hard to overstate how critical the original YouTube show was. And to be clear, this is not even yet a reality. So the idea is the Kickstarter for the Guild is at 4.2. Seems pretty certain it'll hit 4.6. Then they'll create an episode. And for every 100K after that, they'll create another episode, apparently. So it'll sort of depend on how well the Kickstarter does, whether they get to do this and how big it is. It sounds like they want to do it, but they've got to get in that budget. But, the original show was so big, Target struck a deal with the show to know ahead of time what they were going to cover so that they could properly stock and carry games. Because the games became overnight successes, right? Ticket to Ride, Suro, Pandemic, any number of games out there, and including role-playing games, enormously benefited from this show. And so we're seeing this possibility of Tabletop coming, mentioned on ICV2 and board game sites and all kinds of things, because it could just vastly change what games rise or fall based on this show coming back.
I had very few must-see streaming shows, and that was one of them when it was running back in the day.
It was really well done, and it did a nice job of showing you not just how to play, but the entertainment was there for seeing the people play, and you could appreciate the design of the games. It was very, very good. Things like, Lords of Waterdeep got to be on there, right? The double clicks were there. Just any number of fun things that made it really enjoyable.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our creator corner here, where we talk about things that are being created by folks around the industry. And we're going to start with Doom Dust of the Disintegrator Deluxe Edition. So creator Sursa Victory, known for his fun classic inspired dungeons, has in the past released a Dark Egyptian dungeon on itch.io for free. He's now providing a deluxe edition for print or PDF via Kickstarter. It's a Shadow Dark adventure for 4th level characters where you are plundering the shattered tomb mound of a destroyed demi-lich before sandstorm buries it forever. There are random tables. 3 of them are interconnected, called Nomads, Monsters, and Treasures. So it will change how the adventure plays each time. And the players have 3 hours of real-world time to find and steal the demi-lich dust before the storm arrives. You can fund this through August 22nd. So you have a couple weeks now to get to it. What's the next one, Teos?
Leveled Lairs Aboleths, tossing bones known as Orin on our Discord, shared with members of our Discord discounted copies of this DM toolkit of adventures, lore, and more for tiers 1, 2, and 3. So if you're on our Discord, hop on there and get that discounted copy. When you get the 5e version, you also get the Shadow Dark version. The product is about Aboleths, but there are other types of creatures that are included in the adventures. The cool supplement uses Forge of Foes by Mike Shea, Scott Gray, and me for the math, providing quick monster statistics and monster features. It was very cool. Nice of Oren to share this with our Discord. And I appreciate how often our Discord members have given something at a deep discount or even for free on there, which is really, really great.
Yeah. Come for Teos and I. Stay for all of the other Discord creators or creators who are in our Discord who do amazing stuff.
Yeah.
All right. That was our news and commentary section. You hang in there. You come back because we're going to be talking about the Gen Con keynote and the D&D 2026-27 roadmap.